Hi, welcome to Loft 801. My name is Diego, and today I'm talking about one of my most requested reviews, Gangs of Wasseypur. Since this movie was broken up into two parts, I will be doing two separate reviews. Thank you to everyone who requested this movie. FYI, this movie has been out for over 13 years, so this review will contain spoilers and I will not feel bad about it. In a nutshell, Gangs of Wasseypur Part 1 follows Sardar and his life of vengeance against Ramadhir Singh, a cunning politician and mining kingpin who had his family murdered. Gangs of Wasseypur is one of those movies where at first I was honestly a little lost, but by the end I could really appreciate what it was doing. The biggest thing for me was remembering who everyone was, how they were related, and why their stories mattered. There are a lot of characters in this movie and it can take a while to figure out who fits where, but once the whole story started coming together, a lot of the confusion faded and I could clearly see how carefully this movie was put together. What I really liked about this movie is the sheer scope of it. It feels less like one contained movie and more like a sprawling crime family saga. Honestly, it kind of feels like The Godfather if it were Indian. You've got generations of hatred, betrayals, political power plays, gang rivalries, and family drama all mixed together. The movie is constantly showing you how violence never really ends. It just gets inherited. Shahid Khan's choices shape Sardar, and then Sardar's choices are clearly setting up what Faizal and the next generation are going to become. Even when I wasn't fully emotionally attached to every character, I could still feel the weight of the world and history pressing down on everyone. This isn't just one revenge story. It's decades of resentment, bloodshed, pride, humiliation, and survival all stacked on top of each other. Sardar is obviously one of the main engines of the movie, and while he's compelling to watch, I really did not like him as a person. He's intense, driven, and obsessed with avenging his father, which gives him a strong purpose, but he's also selfish and ruled by his appetites. The movie makes it very clear that revenge is what fuels him, but lust is what weakens him. I think his downfall is ultimately Samson-esque and tied to his unfaithfulness. The more he gets consumed by his second relationship and the more he neglects his wife Nagma and his original family, the more his life starts to fracture. He doesn't notice it at first, but his pride and lust end up making him vulnerable in a way that his enemies couldn't do on their own. By the time he gets betrayed and killed, it feels tragic, but it also feels earned. His death doesn't just come because he has enemies, but because of the kind of man he chose to be. That's part of what makes the story work. Sardar isn't some noble anti-hero. He's a deeply flawed man whose personal failures are just as destructive as the gang war around him. I also think this movie does a good job of making it feel like part 1 is a part of something bigger. It doesn't feel like a complete story in the traditional sense because it's not. This movie was originally meant to be released as a nearly 6-hour crime epic, but no theater was willing to screen a movie that long, so director Anuragkashyap broke this movie into two parts. Because this movie was designed to be a complete story, there is a good stopping point with Sardar's story that makes you interested in seeing what's going to happen in part 2. By the end, it's obvious that this movie has been laying the foundation for what comes next, especially with Faizal and the younger generation. By the time you get to the climax in this movie, it's easy to see why the movie spends so much time setting up family lines, rivalries, betrayals, and political shifts. It's building an entire world, not just one isolated story. By the time it ended, I felt much more clarity than I did during the opening, and some of the concerns I had earlier on were resolved, because I could finally see the bigger picture. The acting across the board is really solid too. I wouldn't say that there was any one performance where I was completely blown away and obsessing over it afterward, but I also never felt like anybody was out of place. Everyone feels believable within this world, and in a movie with this many characters, that matters a lot. The actors sell the grime, the pride, the ego, the violence, and the family tension really well. Manojbajpayee worked as Sardar because the performance made him feel like a real force. Reckless, arrogant, dangerous, but also human enough that you understand why people follow him and the women in his life get trapped in his orbit. Richachadha stands out as Nagma because she brings a lot of emotional grounding to the film. She's strong, frustrated, humiliated, loyal, and exhausted all at once, and you can feel the years wearing on her. The cast as a whole does a really good job of making this world feel lived in. Even when I was still trying to learn who certain characters were, I still believed them as people in this environment. Which, speaking of, another thing I really liked about this movie was the setting and how it evolved over time. In fact, that might be one of my favorite aspects of the movie. You really get to see the transformation of this world across decades, and that adds so much to the story. Early on, you're seeing these people living in rough conditions, mud huts, sparse areas, and a much harsher environment. As time passes, you start to see the families move into houses, modernize a little more, build businesses, get involved in politics, and adapt to changing times. You see the world changing from an older, almost rural, survival-based existence into something more modern and criminally organized. That progression helps make the story feel bigger and more alive. It also visually reinforces the idea that these families have been at war for generations. Time is moving forward, technology technology is changing, businesses are shifting, but the violence and grudges remain. I also liked how this movie uses different actors at younger ages, older ages, and then prosthetic makeup later on to help sell the passage of time. The makeup looked convincing to me, and it helped make the decades-long scope feel realistic and not gimmicky. When it comes to the cinematography, I wouldn't say it was doing anything unbelievably stunning or groundbreaking, but I still liked the visual style overall. The movie has a gritty, chaotic energy that fits the material. Some of the CGI, bullet holes, and a few rough edges can look a little out of place, but weirdly, that almost adds to the charm. It makes the film feel rough, raw, and handmade in a way that serves the tone. What stood out to me more than the cinematography was the music. I really liked the Indian music throughout the movie because it adds so much flavor and personality. It gives the film a cultural texture that helps immerse you in the world. The music makes the movie feel more alive, and it helps distinguish this from just being another crime movie. It has its own identity, and the soundtrack plays a big role in that. Even though I struggled a little with keeping track of all the characters in the film, by the time the movie ended, I could see why so many people had been recommending it to me. This is a layered, ambitious crime saga that feels rich with history, culture, and generational pain. I don't think everything about it has fully clicked with me on an emotional level, and I don't know if it's a movie I'll ever revisit, but I absolutely respect what it's doing, and I'm glad I finally watched it. More importantly, I think it does exactly what a part 1 should do. It builds a fascinating world, leaves major consequences hanging in the air, and it made me genuinely curious to see where Faizal and this bloody family legacy would go next. If you want to hop into this story, I'd certainly recommend it. Just be aware that you'll need to invest 5.5 hours to get all of the bang for your buck. If you don't care about returns and just want to see this as a standalone film, I'd still recommend it. There's a lot to enjoy. Thank you for listening to my review of Gangs of Wasseypur. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and hit subscribe. If you did not enjoy the video, I'm sending the cons after you. As always, I would love to read what you have to say, so leave a comment and let me know what you're thinking. Also, if there's something you want to see reviewed, don't forget to let me know and I will do my best to get to it. Again, thank you to everyone who requested this review. Lastly, if you want to see some more from me, then you can check out my vlogs linked up above or my podcast, Good Friends. Again, thank you for watching. My name is Diego, and I will see you next time.